and welcome to another Spouse Link live stream. My name is Anna Larson. I am a Spouse Link ambassador, copywriter, digital marketer, homeschool mom, and retired military spouse. Now, today's conversation is the critical conversation that absolutely nobody wants to have. Raise your hand if you look at military retirement and transition and then say, oh, everything's going to go fine. Yeah, there's very few hands, I'm sure, that are raised right now. But what about if you're looking at it and you are worrying about the mental wellness of either yourself or your service member? Now, my spouse and I have been open about his challenges with PTSD and the difficulty that we've had with our transition. It's not something that you need to hide or feel ashamed about. In fact, it's something that really military families should be talking about even more than they do. And as more and more military families leave active duty service and confront these issues, this conversation is going to be even more important. So I'm really excited today because my guest, Annette Whittenberger, A Wild Ride Called Life, which I love her business name, right? Like, how fun is that? A Wild Ride Called Life. Just fits so well. But she and I are going to talk about topics like what being mentally well really means, the challenges that you're going to be facing through retirement and transition, having a plan to practice self-care, and then kind of like just finding your purpose beyond military life and what that looks like and how that helps with your mental wellness. Now, the live streams that I'm doing are for military spouses, service members looking for connection and support as they near that time frame when they're crossing over and transitioning or retiring from the active duty service. Spouse Link was created in 2012 by AFMA, the American Armed Forces Mutual Aid Association, to support, inform, and inspire military spouses around the world. They do a fabulous job of that. So as we dive into today's topic, please be sure to leave comments, share your experiences. Let me know where you're joining me from, because not only do I value what you're listening to and what you have to say about these topics, but my guest does as well, and the community does as well. So I'm super excited to have you here joining us. I'm going to jump right in right now with my live stream guest bio. So we can bring her up because she is the star of the show. All right, so Annette Whittenberger. Now, I'm just going to do you a little confession. Annette lives about 5 minutes away from me, okay? We're neighbors. I know her very, very well. So this big, long bio just basically sums up that she's one of the coolest people I know in the entire world. But she is a military spouse of 24 years. She's a mother of two, but she's also a retired combat veteran who served in the Army for over 17 years. So Annette has hit both sides of the coin here. She retired in November 2016 and fell into being an accidental entrepreneur. And now she uses her voice to share her story about real life after the Army and living with a mental illness. Since her retirement, she has focused on her business, A Wild Ride Called Life, her podcast, speaking, mentoring, volunteering, and she also wrote a book which is called The Wall Between Two Lives. It's a fabulous book, by the way. Highly recommend it. Annette also does a blog, A Wild Ride Called Life, and incorporates stories from her post-military life in which she shares how she lives life as being a mom, a military spouse, living with PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Her podcast is titled The Truths We Hide and offers advice to others to help them know that they are not alone and to provide hope. Now, I happen to know that Annette also has some really cool things coming up, but I'm going to let her tell you about that later at the end of the show. Without further ado, I'm going to bring her. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to bring Annette up on stage for us. Hi. Yay, I'm so glad you're here. Hi, neighbor.
Hi.
How are you?
I am so good. Thank you so much for having me on.
I know. We've got so many people come out to say hi. Look, hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. Let me know where you're listening from. And again, please participate and join in the conversation. We are super excited to have you here with us today. So, okay, Annette, I feel like I want to really start with, I'm springing this on her. I kind of want to start with a little bit about your personal story. Like, why is this topic your topic. This is kind of this is your thing. This is what you center your work around now. So tell me a little bit about how this became your thing.
I retired from the military in 2016, as it was shown, but my retirement came a lot sooner than I expected. It was my second go around at being looked at for the next promotion, and I didn't get it, and it destroyed me. I think we all spend so many years in the military being rated on that piece of paper, and that paper defined who I was. So I was devastated. I went into this really deep, dark depression. I think everything had just fell on me like a ton of bricks, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who I was. And so I felt like I needed to say something. And back then, or even now, we all turn to Facebook, right? Facebook is like the platform where we spill our guts, but it wasn't well received. A lot of people thought that I should be seeking therapy instead of putting it on social media. So I said, you know what? F that. I'm going to create a website. And so I hired another veteran to create my website. And I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put it out there. So no Facebook, no this, just put it out into the world where everybody can see it. And I often joke about go big or go home. And that's really what I did, because I knew I was going to explode. And after talking to other soldiers and talking to other people, I knew that I wasn't the only one. And I was like, let's just start this conversation. So that's where A Wild Ride Called Life came from. I'm really big into my faith, and I swear it was just like one night that title came to me, and I said, we're going to use that. And so that's what we did. And so the blog is how it all started, and then from then just exploded into a million other things.
So I love this story. I mean, I don't love this story. It's not a fun story for you, right? But what I mean by that is I can very much appreciate what you're saying in terms of how difficult that process was for you. And then when you tried to speak out and say something, you were shut down and even ridiculed and like told you're doing it wrong, right? And I don't think your story, unfortunately, is unique in that way. I think there's a lot of people that kind of get approached, have the same exact kind of thing happen to them. And they're told to be quiet, don't talk about it, buck up, little camper, embrace the suck and get on with life. That's kind of the message that we give. So thank you so much for sharing that, Annette, because I know that that's something it's both personal, and yet you're using it to make sure that others have a chance to have their voices heard in the future. So thank you for sharing that. Okay. Yeah. So as we move on into now the actual conversation you're going to have, right? I want to throw out our first question. Okay. So our first question is, what does it mean to be mentally well? And I think it's super important to kind of just like define this, because really it looks differently for everyone, right? Like, what would you say to somebody if they were like, yeah, Annette, I'm doing fine, but you know that they're not? What are those signs? What does it mean to be mentally well?
Gosh, it took me 5 years into retirement to finally figure that part out. And the first thing that screams to me is giving myself grace. I know I'm not okay some days, and it's okay to be like that. But I have learned that, you know what? It's okay. Give yourself the grace. Feel that peace of knowing that you don't have to always be the strong one. And I have my small circle of people who get that and still sorry.
Oh no, I adore you.
Who don't judge me for that. And I think that's one of the most important things. So mentally well to me is just giving yourself that grace, because it is different for other people. And that's kind of like a tricky question, like mentally well, mentally unwell. Like, what is that? How do you define that? And that's just what it is to me. It's because I know that I still struggle.
So I love the way that you've defined that, because what it does is it says whether you're having a good day or whether you're having a bad day, whether it's whether you're feeling like you can accomplish all the things or whether you're feeling like you need to lay in bed, you can still have mental wellness as long as you're allowing yourself to have that moment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to live in that moment.
Yeah.
What would be the difference in what, I mean, if you were to see someone, like, what would it look like if you weren't giving yourself that grace? Is that buck up little camper moment that we were talking about earlier?
There are times where I'm hard on myself. Like if I don't sit at this computer for 8 hours a day, then I have failed at going forward to make my business successful. When in fact, that's not true. You don't have to sit here for 8 hours. You can spread it out, whatever the case is. So I know if I am having that moment like I did a couple weeks ago where I didn't want to get out of bed, I knew there was something wrong.
Yeah. I'm
And yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, just for those that are listening right now, what do you think about Annette's definition of being mentally well? Essentially, just giving yourself the grace to have the feelings you're having in that moment. I'm super curious, like, how people receive that, because I think that is out of the box from what the normal definition might mean, right? Being able to cope, being able to do this, being able to do that. There's like this laundry list of things that you're supposed to be able to do if you're in a good mentally well space, right? And what you're saying is that's not necessarily the case.
It can't be like that for everybody. I know that we've been groomed to be a certain way. You be tough. Don't let them see you sweat. Don't let them see you cry. Don't show emotion. Like just press on. And sometimes you just can't. You just want to go, you know what? Screw this. I can't do it. And it's okay to do that. And it took me many years to realize that. I will never be like my husband. I will never be like a ranger guy. I will never be like that. And it's okay. I'm done. Like
Yeah. And we had a comment come in earlier from Julie Mosier that said, we're transitioning soon. What Annette is saying worries me about my trooper. So this is very interesting because a lot of times we look at this mental wellness and the transition process and we think, oh, our service member is going to have a really hard time. And you did have a hard time as a transitioning service member. My spouse had a hard time as a transitioning service member. I know a lot of spouses that do, like service member spouses that do. Um, can we talk about that for just a
yeah.
minute? Like what that looks like in your experience, and what would you say to families going through that process?
Yes, I saw that comment and I was like, oh, I feel that so hard because let me just talk about really quick because from not my point of view, but my husband was supposed to retire this year. He has chosen not to because he's not ready. He'll kill me for doing this, but he wasn't ready. He's done this for 28 years. He loves what he does, but he's not ready. He doesn't know what he wants to do when he grows up. He's so we agreed. I'm like, you know what, do what you got to do because I get it. I totally get it. Don't get out before you're ready. For me, I had 6 months to get out. It was like, holy shit, sorry. I can't. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. My husband didn't know how to help me through that. And so what I say to you, Julie, is you have been to these trainings. You're part of so many communities. It's going to be okay. Just be there for him. Don't, and I'm not, I don't know how your relationship, I'm just saying, don't force him. Like my husband tried to get me to do the resume. He tried to get me to get the job. And I was like, I can't, just leave me alone. So just be the ear. And I'm always available to talk to anybody because it was very hard for me. So just be there. It's going to be okay. I promise. Just there's so many resources now that you see that. When he's ready, have him talk to that nonprofit who's offering those resources. You don't have to go on post. Sorry, you don't. You don't have to go there. There are so many different things. So, but we could talk offline, Julie. I feel that really hard. I understand.
Yeah. And I think Julie's expressing probably what a lot of people facing transition are feeling. I know that when we went through this now 2 years ago at this point, right?
Mhm.
And totally unprepared for what there was, or even what to expect. Like I just, anyway, yeah. We
Yeah,
all know my story,
totally.
right?
Totally.
I'm
So
hopeful.
you have the people to guide you through it when you're ready and when he's ready. So
Yeah.
we're here for you to get through it.
Absolutely. So, just, I mean, that flows very well into kind of the next question that I wanted to ask you about, which are, let's talk about some of the challenges that you're going to see at military transition. And this is for both the service member and the families, not just the service member. And to help us with that, I want to bring this up. So, here's what I did. I went and Googled challenges for military transition, and more or less a bunch of different articles came up, but they all essentially had the same kinds of things on there. So I wanted to throw this up there just so that we could like just scroll through really quickly, kind of like the big ones, right? Relating to people who do not know or understand what military service members have experienced or what military life is like. That's a huge one, right? It's one of the reasons why the military community is so strong. Reconnecting with family and reestablishing a role in your family, finding a new community, entering the workforce, creating a new norm for structures and routines, adjusting to getting family care, healthcare, and housing differently, and then establishing services for the VA. Now, before we came online, I had showed this to Annette. And I said, you know what I find really interesting about this is this was meant to be a list for the service member. But I read this and thought every single one of these relates to the military spouse as well. Like, what would you say to that, Annette?
Totally. I mean, even the last one we were talking about, the establishing services, I really feel that also resonates with military spouses because you sometimes we veterans don't want to communicate. We're like, leave me alone. I've got this. Don't worry about me. So the spouse is left going, I don't know who to talk to. I don't know what to do. So this is very a very important bullet here because you might need to be that person to go find those services when your soldier is like, I'm good, when you
Yeah.
know they're not.
And you know they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I loved this list of challenges. Not loved, right? Like these suck. All of these are really difficult and very hard. And it takes a long time to get through some of them. But I appreciated that they put this list together and were like, these are real things that you're going to have to face. And some of them we look at it and we're like, what's the big deal? Like reconnecting with family. My family loves me or whatever. Like we've seen them, but it's different when you're not active duty, right?
Yeah.
There is a different feeling that happens. It's not just a feeling though. I mean, you're in a different place. You don't have somebody PCSing you anymore. So, are you going to see the in-laws for Christmas or not going to see the in-laws for Christmas, right? Like, and entering the workforce, all of those things that come with trying to translate your resume, or if you're a military spouse and didn't get to work for many, many, many years, like how to fill out your resume, right? Like these things are like major life events that we're talking about. They're not minor and they all happen at once,
Of course they do.
right?
No, you're totally right. I mean, when I moved back here, this was my last move. I was like, I don't have the help of the army anymore. I don't have that connection anymore. This is it. And I was freaking out. Like, are you really, this is it. So I had to learn. I even reached out to you guys. What dental facility do you use? Where do you go to the doctor? Like all these things are so new because I was so used to going, oh, we'll just go on base. But
Yeah.
you can't always go on base for certain things. You're referred out. So where's the place? Yeah, it's like this circle that's never ending. But after a while, it's like, okay, this is going to be okay. We found our place, we found our people. But it's so stressful.
It is stressful. So it's kind of funny too because um I've always done like like care through TRICARE, right? When we were active duty. And then when we weren't, and I really struggled with trying to figure out how regular people healthcare works.
You're right.
I was so used to just being told where to go and what to do and what time to be there that having all of those choices were really difficult for me. They're like, "Well, what do you want?" And I'm like, "Why are you asking me? You're the doctor. Just tell me what I need, right?" I did not realize until it was pointed out to me by a very dear friend of ours named Selena, how institutionalized I had become as a military spouse, even with my healthcare options.
Mhm.
How used to being part of that TRICARE system I was, and that active duty TRICARE system, I should say, because we didn't do standard when we were active duty, and so I hadn't realized how different it was when you're on the outside, and that even today is still a struggle with me. They're like, "Well, do you want a referral?" I'm like, "Well, can you give me a referral?" Like, I don't, how does this work then? Once you give me the referral, then what am I supposed to do with it? Right? Because it's not the same. It's all different. So, what would you say for yourself, Annette? What has been the biggest challenge as a service member? And then let me ask you the flip side. What has been your biggest challenge as the military spouse through this transitioning time frame? Because your spouse isn't ready yet, right? But it's coming. You
It
see it
is.
happening. Yeah.
As the service member, we're treated so differently, unfortunately, because when I go to a doctor, one of the many, oh, so you're a retired veteran, you need to go here. Oh, you're a military spouse, so you have to do this. So it's two completely different ways to be taken care of when it shouldn't be. And, sometimes they're like, oh, you're fine. You don't need to get that ultrasound. Just go do this. So it's just very difficult being out and being the military spouse now, because you're treated differently. You're given different kinds of care. And unfortunately, that needs to be fixed a little bit more, a lot more. But it is frustrating. It's very frustrating because it's like, well, does it matter who I am? I'm still that person who is sick. Just get me to a doctor. So it's a struggle. It's a struggle, and I feel for everybody who goes through that.
Yeah, it really is. So, okay, so let's transition just a little bit. Um, we just talked about some of the challenges that you're going to face. None of them, I think, are like new or, mind bendingly like, what? I didn't know that was going to be happening to me, right? Like, I mean, I think everybody that's nearing transition has heard these things over and over again with varying degrees of, yeah, I got this. I'm going to be just fine. In terms of like how they feel about what they're going to be able to do. So here's my next question for us then. Oh, I don't want it to be a ticker. Hold on. That's a technical thing. Here we go. All right. So, how do these challenges affect our mental wellness? What is it that we need to be watching for as we're going through that transition when giving ourselves that grace that you were talking about isn't enough? And we do need maybe that extra help or to talk with someone or to sit down and, you know, like evaluate where we're at.
Yeah, so as soon as I see the as soon as I saw this question, I have to go back to this TikTok I saw the other day about this soldier, this veteran, and he was a complete mess. He was in tears because he was talking about continuity of care. And so I think that's the biggest challenge we have right now, is that continuity of care. So when we go through these challenges and we have to face the fact that we have to see a different doctor than we just saw 2 months ago, it's like, are you kidding me? So that's where I feel like we really just need to continue fighting for what we want, for what we believe, because it breaks you down. It frustrates you. It's like, I give up, forget it, I'll just figure it out on my own. And so it completely, that kind of thing can consume you. And so it just breaks my heart. So it
Mm.
does, it can affect you big time. And that video that went viral, just, it broke my heart.
Oh, I wish I'd known about that. We could have showed it today, but I'm gonna
Oh,
have to
it's
go look
hard.
for it. Yeah,
Yeah, I'll send it to you, but it's very triggering. So that would have been very difficult on here today.
yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe we won't share it on the
Yeah,
on
we
this.
won't share it on here, but I could send it to you so that if somebody wants it, we could
Yeah.
send it. Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting the way you describe this. So you have this service member that's now out of the military and that continuity of care. And if we look at that list of challenges up here, really that continuity of care flows through each one of those. Having a job, you know, having a community that you're comfortable in, your family being your core family members, having that role as either mom or dad or extended family, auntie, uncle, son, daughter, whatever it might be. Finding that structure and routine. I mean, my spouse's life as a retiree is way different, like routine wise, than it was when he was active duty.
Completely.
Right? I mean, there's no PT. He's not getting up at 5 in the morning searching for a PT belt and putting on his shoes and that kind of a thing. None of that's happening at 5 in the morning anymore. Like even little tiny bits like that, and then reminding ourselves like these self-care things that the military required from us are no longer required. And what are you going to fill that time with,
Right.
right?
Right.
Ooh,
It's so true. And I kind of miss that because I knew I had to be somewhere by this time. Now it's like, I'll get there when I get there.
yeah, right. Well, and see, that's what you hit upon a really important point though, Annette, because a lot of times I think service members say to themselves, I'll figure it out, right? Like it'll come after a while, and then you're 2 years down the road and you still haven't figured it out.
Yep.
Now you feel I've failed
Yep.
somehow. I haven't accomplished what I need to be. Or, what they call it, what the freshman 15, the post service member 15, right? Like you're gaining weight, or your job is not going as well as you thought. Because let's remember some statistics here, right? What is it? Like 90% of service members leave their first job they choose after the military within the first year, right? I mean, that can be a huge devastating transition too, either to feel like you're not valued or it's the wrong position, or I don't know how to deal with the civilian workforce, whatever that might be, right?
Right.
And all of that kind of accumulates. So they talk about, what is that time frame called, right in between when you're transitioning and it's that gap time frame.
Terminal leave?
No, it's like after terminal leave, and it's where you have to be really, really super mindful of like um uh of soldiers that are dealing with severe mental health issues where there are suicide risk and whatnot. I can't remember what the gap's called. It's
Can't
like
think of it.
flew out
Okay.
of my brain. But what I've realized personally, is they talk about that gap being, the 6 months or the year in between when they retire, and that 1 year mark. But the reality is, in my opinion, is that is really, you have to extend that time frame
Right.
out years and years and years until that service member has been able to address all of those challenges, until that military spouse has been able to address those challenges and find their way through it.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right. All right. So let's talk now a little bit like, all right, we've got this mental wellness, mental unwellness. We've got all these things going on. So what should a care plan look like? What's some things you would throw into the care plan? And I would love people front that are listening in right now, drop it in the comments. Like, what are you doing? Because I know a lot of people listening right now. I know who they are. I know they're going through retirement or transition right now. So what are you doing as part of your mental wellness care plan? Annette, what are your suggestions?
Oh my gosh. So for me, when I think I have ADHD, I swear. I know that when little things start to trigger me and I start to get really overwhelmed and I get anxious and I'm just like about to just explode, I know I need to walk away and I'll just go watch Netflix or Hulu or whatever we have. I know my signs now. I'm starting to feel like I'm gonna explode. I'm about to lose my shit. Let me just walk away and go turn on music. Let me go watch TV or I'll take a nap. So my care plan includes those things because I know this is what will just completely uh, clear my mind and watch something funny. I just now joined our local YMCA here, so I know that going swimming completely changes me. I don't know what it is, but getting in that water is like it's peaceful. So I think we need to just even if we're trying to do a family care plan for our family, our spouses, we should have that book that says, okay, if I start to be like this, bring me ice cream, or you know what I mean, like just so they know, okay, mom is no, leave her alone, let her be. But I think we need to communicate that, right? Because not everybody knows. If I start to feel distant, okay, what do I, and that's the funny, or not, I'm going to say funny, the funny thing is that like you and Selena have both recognized little things. Even Selena and I have come up with a number, a scale, because I've been really low lately. So she'll say, "Okay, friend, what's your number today?" And I'll be like a 5 or a 7, and we'll talk through it. So I think if we start developing things like that, like we do for kids, like which smiley face are you today? Are you frowning? Are you? So I think it's little things like that. Make it to where they know how to help you. They know what to do, because it gets so overwhelming. I don't know how to take care of my soldier. He's not acting right. Okay, so I think that's the biggest thing. Write it down, and communication is the biggest thing. So
I love that you said communication, right? Because that really is huge. A lot of times we just put on that smiley face. Oh, I'm fine. Everything's going great. Don't worry about it, until you legit have that breakdown and you cannot cope any longer. And I don't know why people are so afraid to say, oh, it's been a little rough lately. Was harder than I had thought, right? I don't know why that's so hard for us to say.
we don't want to seem weak. I know sometimes I won't call you guys because I don't want to feel like a burden. It's something I have to work through. You could tell me a million times you're not a burden, but that's how I was trained for so long. So I'm still working through that. I seclude myself, and I just don't talk. And so it's hard. It's hard. We don't want to seem weak, like we can't handle it. I
Yeah.
just
And I think honestly, and on the service member side, that makes a lot of sense, right? Like there is definitely an element of you must be strong, you must be tough, you must, rise above and embrace the suck. You just get on with it, right? Like move through it. But I'm gonna just say for military spouses, the same conversation. I just want to throw this out there. Because we move as much as we move, because our community transitions as much as it transitions, it's hard to build deep friendships where you can feel very comfortable sharing some of those difficult moments, like in their truest form, I'm going to say, right? And so I think that for a military spouse, they have to remember and understand that it's not just the service member that's going to struggle through this.
yep.
Your mental wellness care plan. I love that we had a couple thrown out there. Adam lifts weights.
Yep.
Heidi does exercise and therapy, and she even throws up here. I'm going to throw this out there too. The journey is hard for the kids too.
Yes.
Kids are not used to spouses being home. They're not used to the service member being there. This is that family dynamic change that we talk about, where things go so different, and you have to find a new norm where everybody's able to work and function together, right?
Yes.
So I'm just going to encourage this. Like if there's one thing you take from today's conversation, start to communicate the truth that's really happening with you, right? Like, I mean, you don't have to word vomit everything and, spill it to the lady behind you in the grocery store, but find those people that you can have that conversation, that real conversation, and this is what Annette does for her job, right? She talks to people, she coaches people through this, she helps them and supports them. I am here. I am here. I am your transition spouse link lady. Just message me, right? And if there's a resource or a person or someone I think that can help you, I'm going to make sure you get connected in that way. All right. I had to throw that in there because this is that part where I'm like, please don't be alone.
You're so right though, and that's so important. So yeah, you're not alone at all. I think it's just hard for us to make that step to admit, that we're just not okay, and we need to do more of that.
Yeah. So,
Mhm.
Annette, if I were to, we're kind of closing down our time here together today, unfortunately, because I could talk to you for hours. But if there was one like piece of advice you would leave for transitioning military, I'm going to say families because it could be service member, spouse. I mean, or the family as a whole. What is it that you would say to them from your level of experience?
So I mentioned the word grace earlier, and I think that's the biggest thing because so many things are probably going to go wrong at the same time, right? Because that's just what nature does. It just that's how life is. But as long as we remember to take a breath and realize that we're doing everything that we can and that it's going to be okay, then that's what I wish I would have done before. I stressed out about so many things, my kids, my life, my family. Um, but I think that's the biggest thing. You have to give yourself grace. You're gonna get through it. And to remember to just communicate with whoever, whoever you want to talk to, and just say, I'm gonna lose my shit. Please help. Please help. Because yeah, I wish I would have done that.
Okay, you have heard it here today. If you feel like you're going to lose it, you have to reach out and say something, okay? Do not wait.
Don't.
That's the best advice. I love it. Okay, Annette, can you please share with the people who are here today, like, let them know how they can connect with you, learn more about you, get your book, all the things.
If you're on LinkedIn, I'm more active in there now, and then I'm always on Instagram. So, and I'm getting more on TikTok. But yes, so those two places are. I've had people go to my website to try to book a call with me, so you can do that too. So everywhere, just search "A Wild Ride Call Life" and you'll find me.
There you go. Look at this big long list. There is no reason for someone to not find
No,
Annette if you
no,
want to find her. I
yes.
love it. Okay. Well, I think today's conversation is so dang important, right? This is one of those things, this mental wellness aspect of transition really is one of the very hardest. Next month, Spouse Inc. is going to really be focusing on PTSD awareness, what that looks like, what that means for transitioning and military families and active duty, because just because it doesn't only crop up just because you're transitioning out, right? PTSD is there sometimes for the duration and it can be very difficult. And so please reach out if this is a conversation that you want to have. Please reach out to me. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what kind of resources you might be looking for and need, and I can pass that along to my Spouse Link persons in charge, because we really do want to create content and create resources and make sure that everybody knows like really what it is that where they can go for help, whether you're a service member struggling through it, or you're a military spouse supporting a service member, or if you have kids that are being affected by it, military children that are being affected by a situation where there's PTSD in the home. So, okay. And with that, we are going to say thank you so much for joining us on this Spouse Link live stream. Annette, I love talking to you as my neighbor. Let's have coffee, right? Sometime soon. I'll
Oh.
text you. But seriously, thank you for sharing your expertise and your wisdom, for being so truthful and vulnerable and allowing people to hear your story. I mean, you preach what you say, or you do what you preach, which is, you get out there, you talk about it, you communicate, you say the hard things, you let yourself be vulnerable. And it's so important to let people see that. So thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And to everyone else, we will be posting soon what our next Spouse Link live stream looks like. And until then, we will see you later.